Last week, we started a new sermon series at the end of Genesis on Joseph. That's going to take us up to Passion Week or Easter season. I'm very excited about it. It's called Joseph, When Dreams Come True. If you've ever been hurt by your family, if you've ever been blamed for something that you didn't do, if you've ever been embarrassed about your past, the story of Joseph should connect really well with your story. It should resonate with your heart, I think. This dreamer character, Joseph, goes through all that stuff. And he's going to kind of show us how to deal with that disappointment, with that dysfunction on one level. But even more, he's going to point us forward to another character who would come later in the Bible who deals with it on a whole other level, right? That's Jesus. We know that. This story of Joseph shows God interacting with Joseph's really difficult situations. And I think that's going to be really encouraging for us in our difficult situations too. We need to study Joseph right now. We need to study Genesis right now for a whole bunch of reasons. One, on our plate of Bible food, there's a little bit of a gap in this beginning part of the Bible. We need Genesis as part of our Bible diet, and so that's why we're giving this some attention. We want to stay hitched to the Old Testament. There's a popular thought floating around right now that says you can unhitch from it. You don't really need the Old Testament. Not true. We need the Old Testament. We like it. We love it. It's part of our heritage, our history, and our Bible. So we're gonna stay connected to it and try to keep figuring out how to connect to it the right way. We need this because we want to enlarge our understanding of Jesus. And believe it or not, Joseph, this Old Testament character, does that really, really well. Maybe as much or more than any other Old Testament character in my experience and opinion. Joseph shows us Jesus a ton in his gospel through typology or foreshadowing, showing us pictures, glimpses, previews of what Jesus would come to be and do. We're also doing this because the elders are really excited about it. I'm very happy to say that. The elders chose this section of the Bible for us to study together and are absolutely pumped about it. I think the Spirit is fueling that excitement. That's a beautiful thing to see, to be a part of. So I hope you enjoy it and are excited about it too. And last of all, we're doing this because this is my favorite Old Testament character. I have a lot of fun with Joseph. I really enjoy this text a lot. So I hope you can enjoy that too. Last week, we didn't really talk about that character, Joseph, my favorite, at all. We talked about the family and the situation that he was born into, the dynamics that would condition and shape Joseph's story, right? The deception and dysfunction, the jealousy and the hatred, the sister wives, really uncomfortable story. The sister wives competing for status, for affection, attention, and love, for meaning, And it showed, most importantly, God keeping his promise to build this family. It's the promise he made to Abraham, to build this family, to bless the world through it, even though this family's a complete mess, even though they're worse than all of your families. God is still going to bless the world through them. The story reminds us of how God does the same thing, blessing the world through us, and by entering into our messy, disappointing, dysfunctional lives. That's all of us. Through the work of Jesus, who forgives us for our sin, and through the work of the Holy Spirit, who cleans us up from our sin. He's still doing the same thing today, friends, and we praise him for that. So this week, that was last week. This week, we do get to look at Joseph. We get a first impression of him in Genesis 37, 1 to 11, and I think we might have some mixed reactions to what we see. Some of us might wonder, is this like some snotty, arrogant brat kid who doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut, We might feel initially about Joseph the way we might feel about a teacher's pet in the classroom. Really? This kid's annoying, About the intern at work who's constantly sucking up to the boss or something. Obnoxious. Or maybe a politician who's just constantly flattering his superiors in public and on news. Just, he probably doesn't really mean it. He's just trying to elevate himself. Those kinds of things. Maybe we feel that way about Joseph. As we look to the beginning of Joseph's story, I think we're going to be reminded that nobody likes those guys. Teacher's pet, the suck-up politicians. Nobody enjoys that. I think, in other words, we're probably going to tend to empathize with the brothers in this story. I think we naturally lean that direction because we hate favoritism. We hate authority when it's announced over us in ways that feel a little bit abrasive. We hate authority. We hate favoritism when it means that someone else is getting something we think we deserve. We can't stand favorites. We can't stand bossiness because it usually means that somebody else is taking what we want for ourselves. We hate authority and favoritism when it means someone else is getting what we deserve. Joseph was getting what his brothers wanted, but they couldn't have, and we see that in the first 4 verses of our passage. He's clearly the favorite kid. There's no secret there. But was that the only reason, though, that his brothers didn't like him? But the only reason they hated him? Was it just the prestige they were after? That status? Or was it dad's affection and approval? Is that the thing they wanted? Was it because of that iconic rainbow coat? Maybe. Let's see. Let's reread verses 1 to 4 and see if we can find any more clues about why no one likes this favorite kid. I think there's a little more than just the coat, just the prestige. Look at verse 1. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account, the genealogy, the story of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending his flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph, that's Jacob. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. This scene starts out in a land, a place that the readers of Genesis would have viewed as home. This is the land of promise that Moses and the Hebrews were heading towards. This is their finish line. And so hearing that phrase, Canaan, it'd be like smelling chocolate chip cookies or your mom's lasagna in the oven. You're like, that's home. You know, there's something that kind of warmed their heart when they heard Canaan. It's like my grandma's house. You know, when I go back to my grandma's house, I hear the wind chimes outside. I hear your pool filter running. The blankets and the carpet have a certain texture. The house smells a certain way. It's like, this just feels comfortable. This feels like home. This feels like where I'm supposed to be. My dad grew up there. I spent a lot of my childhood there. Now I can see pictures on Facebook of my nephew out in California. He's playing at my grandma's house too. That's just where Hodson family belongs, you know? You have a space like this too, probably? That's kind of Canaan for the Hebrews. Like, this is grandma's house. So that's where the scene starts. It's like, this is our home. This is where our family is supposed to be. Moses is giving his readers or his listeners a whiff of that, letting them smell home. And they're thinking, everything is right. This is exactly how you want to start a story. Once upon a time, you know, this is where Jacob and his family belong. That's where the nation of Israel belongs. So Joseph is here. He's 17 years old. He's shepherding just like his mom and dad. I don't know if we talked about that last week, but his mom and dad were both shepherds too, Rachel and Jacob. And his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, were shepherding with him. Rachel had died, by the way. She had died in childbirth, giving birth to the last son, Benjamin. So she's not in this scene. But her son, the favorite son, is depicted as this special son, this most legitimate son, the firstborn of the wife that Jacob really wanted all along. The favorite son of the favorite wife. And he's out there shepherding with the maidservant sons, kind of the second-rate sons, literally. And this special favorite, most loved son, the 17-year-old, comes back home from work, and he tells on his brothers. Kind of takes you back to grade school. You're out in the playground, and that kid's like, ooh, I'm going to tell the yard duty. You know, it's like, nobody likes that kid. Stop. You know, nobody trusted that kid. Not because there's anything wrong with that kid. You know, he's probably just trying to be responsible or whatever. But we don't want to be held accountable. We don't want our boss finding out that we're not working as hard as we should be. You know, it's the same impulse that when March Madness comes around in a couple months, it makes you look over your shoulder when you hear footsteps down the hall and you close your browser at work. You know, you're like, I don't want anybody to see that. You know, it's kind of the Joseph impulse. That's why we think Joseph is annoying. Why did Joseph get to do that? Why was he allowed, why did his dad put up with this kind of tattletaling? Why was he allowed to tell on his brothers? I think part of what explains the tattling scene and the brothers' intensifying hatred is the robe that he's wearing. It's the robe that he's wearing in verse 3. Why would you get so worked up over a robe? What's the big deal about this robe, and why is there so much attention drawn to it in the Joseph story? You know that's a really iconic, famous part of Joseph's story. What's going on there? Is it just a symbol of favoritism and specialness? Could be. Is it just an icon of affection and affirmation that the brothers wanted? Just saying, oh, Dad likes this guy more? I think there's a little more to it than just that. There's more meaning wrapped up in this garment than just favoritism for 3 reasons. First, this is a little nerdy and technical. Hang with me, okay? But it's kind of important. First, the adjective describing Joseph's coat only occurs in 2 stories in the Bible. This one and 2 Samuel 13, which also includes a coat. We don't need to talk about that, though. And it's in both situations, it seems to be referring to, if we are considering that word's plainest meaning, original meaning, it means palm. It's a palm of the hand or the sole of the foot. So I think what it's trying to say is that this is just a long coat. The coat sleeves go down to the palm or all the way down to the feet. And that wasn't necessarily normal for garments, for this kind of garment. So it's special in that regard, that it's a full-length coat. It has more to do with the length than it does color. There's nothing here that really makes it say that it's like a Technicolor dream coat or anything like that. It's more about length. It's a long sleeve or a long, low hem type of cloak. And what that is doing is it's probably signifying a management role. It's probably like the boss's uniform rather than the regular low-level employee's uniform. It's like a symbol of status. And that is probably why his brothers super hated him, because he was put out there as manager over them, and he was wearing this reminder that even though I'm younger than all of you guys, I'm kind of your boss. Ooh, that's really annoying. That's the situation, though. That's what that coat meant. It's part of what the robe means. That's why the brothers hated him. The robe is a symbol of status and rank. That's one point. There's more hate that comes from the robe, though, too. The second point is that this longer robe probably represents wealth also. Why? How's that possible? Seems like a stretch. Nerdy, hold on, okay? Hang with me. There's these tablets called the Nuzi tablets from Mesopotamia. It'd be modern-day northern Iraq. And they came from the 2nd millennium, the same time as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the patriarchs. And they're not Bible, but they give really helpful information that guides us in understanding the Bible. Good historical backdrop, okay? And they talk about garments, or the hem of a robe, as like a pocket, like a wallet, a thing that represents your wealth. That the length of your hem on your robe was kind of like, it symbolized your property title or your ID. It'd be kind of like if your phone, holds all your cards in it. Like this is me right here. Like my whole life is in this thing. It's kind of how the hem of a robe functioned. Phone, wallet, big pocket. Think of it that way. Robe represents rank. The robe represents wealth. But also something else. I think there's a third thing here too. In addition to those ideas of management and money that are tied up in this robe, there's some symbolism of inheritance as well. The only other story, this is pretty important, the only other story in Genesis where this specific word for robe is used is Genesis 3, when Adam and Eve are getting kicked out of the garden, and God makes clothes for them. Interesting. God makes them clothes after they sin and realize they're naked and ashamed. They try to cover themselves with leaves. God covers them with something else. That was intended to communicate this. Hey, you guys have sinned. You have to leave, but I'm still going to bless you. I'm still going to take care of you. You still have a job to do. I'm not letting up from that initial blessing and creation mandate to exercise dominion over the earth and to make babies and be fruitful and multiply. You still have to do that. It's still your job. You're still my junior kings I'm your super king. You're still my junior kings over the earth. You just have to go out here and do it now. Okay? So when God clothed them with his own robe that he made for them, he's saying, you are still all of that. I haven't given up on you. You still have an identity with me. You still have an inheritance in me. You're still my firstborn. You're still my inheritors. I haven't given up on you. You're still my kids, even though you're in trouble. That's what's going on there. Anyway, that picture is kind of tied to what's being conveyed in Genesis 37 with Joseph's robe. It means this. Jacob, dad, is treating Joseph like the firstborn, like the inheritor, like the one that has this, like a more special job. He's the primary inheritor, and he's not hiding that from his other sons. All of that is tied up in the robe. All that's tied up in the robe. Recap real quick. This long sleeve robe, not necessarily rainbow, long sleeve robe symbolizes rank, wealth, and inheritance. Rank, wealth, inheritance. And it reminded the brothers that their dad had rejected the birth order, Joseph's, what is he? I don't remember what number he is. He's second to last son. He's definitely not the first. He's kid number 12, because there's a daughter in there too, in the story. Dad rejected that birth order and put Joseph on top, essentially choosing a new firstborn son in Joseph, and he wasn't afraid to kind of flaunt that in front of the other kids and let all the other sons know that. Kind of unaware, aloof of the dad to do that, right? It's just stirring up jealousy between your kids. But if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, this is not a new thing for Jacob, is it? He seems quite happy to flip the birthright order. He did it to his brother. He tricked his dad into doing that. This is a normal thing for him, and he's going to continue it through his own family as well. That family sin kind of continues. So Jacob did it for himself. He's doing it again with Joseph. And this is all of this is why his brothers hated him so much. It's not just because they saw rainbow colors out in the shepherding fields. There's a lot wrapped up in that robe. The brothers saw this favoritism. The shifting of the eldest son's inheritance onto the favorite son, and they hated Joseph for it. They had nothing nice to say. You saw the text say that. They had not a kind word to say to him. Couldn't say hi. Couldn't even give him that normal peace be with you greeting. Couldn't even do. I don't even look at this guy. I hate him so much. It's like coming home to a roommate you're just sick of, and he pays less rent than you, and you don't even want to make contact. I just want to go to my room and lock the door. I don't deal with this dude. Don't talk to me. Or like finding out that somebody who's newer than you, fresher than you at the office, right out of college, she's now a notch above you on the org chart for some crazy reason, even though you've been working there for 15 years. She's now making more money than you just because her dad plays golf with your boss, that kind of thing. That's how they felt about Joseph. How do you even say hi to that girl in the hallway? Even look at her. It'd be tough. It'd be tough, wouldn't it? Our flesh wants to hate that, be jealous, push against it. And we can understand why Joseph's brothers would feel all these things towards him, can't we? So these brothers hated Joseph, not just because he was the favorite, but because this favoritism had huge financial implications. It wasn't just an emotional preference. There was a double portion of dad's resources at stake here. And they hated that. They didn't even want to talk to him about it. If you've been through an estate battle with your siblings, dealt with the will, you know how brutal that tension and conflict can be. It can just rip families apart. So painful. So painful. And this is exactly what's happening with Jacob's family, with his kids in this story right here. This is not new. It's been happening forever, especially in Genesis 37. I think all this reminds us that it's easy to hate the favorite kid when he's getting what you think you deserve. It's easy to hate the favorite kid when he's getting what you think you deserve. That's why Joseph's brothers hated him so much. This is what's wrapped up in Joseph's long, fancy robe. Somebody else was getting what they deserved. Not only did they hate him for his inheritance, for the birthright, for being treated as the eldest when he was almost the youngest, they hated him because he was put in charge. Not just by dad. We already established that he's the manager of the shepherding situation. But he was put in charge by God. And that's what we're going to see in these the next two dreams. That's what that's about. They already felt like he was kind of this bossy, tattletale, snot-nosed, punk teenage brother. They already hated the fact that dad gave him the manager's jacket. They had to look at it. The manager's jacket, the manager's paycheck also. Let them boss him around. Let him boss them around. But as if that wasn't enough, Joseph had these big, grand dreams of being even more in charge. Super annoying for these brothers. He told these dreams to his brothers, pushed their buttons even more. Now, if we're siding with the brothers, I think we're not going to like this kind of thing either. I don't want somebody, I already don't like, coming in and telling me they're going to be my boss someday. That's hard to take. It's hard to hear. We're not going to like these dreams, but they actually contain a message that the brothers need to hear and that we need to hear. We might not like the boss, but we have to listen to what he has to say. We might not like the boss, but you got to listen to what he has to say. See if verse 5 to 11 make that point. Look back down at verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers had said to him, "Do you really intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. You ever wanted to leave a job because your old favorite boss left and a new guy got plugged in and life's just not the same anymore? Can't work with this guy. This is no fun. I feel like this new guy coming in means I'm losing my influence. I think I need to find a new place. You ever felt like that? Or maybe somebody in your department starts sucking up to the boss, reaching for more power, while you're over here just clocking in, clocking out every day, chipping away, minding your own business, trying to work hard. It's annoying. Maybe a coworker is speaking up at a big important meeting, a little bit out of turn, a little bit out of place. You're like, "Who's this guy?" Get back in your lane, pal. A little power play. What are you trying to do? That's the vibe here. Maybe somebody on your team got a promotion and I was overachieving extra hard now. And you're like, "Oh, gosh, really? Calm down." Leaning over your cubicle, like, "When are you going to get that report to me?" That kind of, it's terrible. It's like, dude, just let me do my thing. Get off me. We all hate that shifting and reaching for power. It's really annoying, especially when we feel like the bossy person doesn't deserve it. Joseph's brothers felt exactly the same. Here in verses 5 to 11, Joseph let them know that he was going to get a promotion. And all it did was make them hate him even more. It made them add to their hate. And interestingly, the Hebrew word for add is Yosef. That's where Joseph's name comes from. They were Josephing the hate upon hate towards Joseph. Interesting play on words. Joseph says, "Listen to this, my bundle of grain stands up tall, while your guys bow down to mine." The brothers interpret this. They interpret it correctly. They said, this must mean he thinks he's going to be in charge. That's exactly what it meant. And the hatred just piled up higher and higher, adding Josephing to what was already there. Joseph has another dream and thinks, that last one went really well. Let's try this again. And we're like, read the room, bud. He's okay, though. But seriously, though, we know as readers that they actually did need to hear this. They might not like it, but they needed it. Turn a couple pages. We'll get there in a couple weeks. You'll find out that this actually saved their butts. They needed this. They didn't like it at the time, though. They needed to hear these dreams, and the brothers knew they're probably valid, which is exactly why it got under their skin. They knew it was legit, so it's extra bothersome. He's probably right. Hate him even more. We knew they took these dreams seriously, letting it really bother them for two reasons. One, a double dream or a back-to-back dream like this that was really similar to the previous one meant, we hear this in chapter 41, Joseph says this to Pharaoh, if God gives you a double dream like that, it's guaranteed to happen. That's Joseph's understanding. I think the brothers might have gotten that too. They knew it was serious. Back-to-back dream, that's pretty much a guarantee. And then second, the second dream kind of completed or elevated the first dream. What do I mean by that? What sphere or domain did that first dream happen in? It's on earth, land, farmy illustration, farmy dream. And what about the second one? It's up here in the heavens or the sky. So we've got heaven and earth picture here. And I think this means that heaven and earth are like testifying to the validity of this dream. I'm not just making this up. Deuteronomy 4 does the same thing. Moses calls heaven and earth to testify against his audience for sinning. Heaven and earth can serve as witnesses. That's what's happening in this dream too. That's why they knew it was extra serious. This is a really big idea that Joseph is conveying right now. And we don't like that. So Joseph, I think, had confidence to say this right into his brother's hate-filled eyes because he knew it was going to come true. because he knew it had a lot of weight. He knew that when God has a dream, it's a guarantee. It's gonna happen, you know? It will come true in just a few chapters, and they find out that these dreams are going to be the thing that saves them, even though they hate it right now. As true as that is, as good as these dreams are, as helpful as they're going to be, as much as these guys needed the dreams to come true, these brothers are only able right now to respond in jealousy. Like verse 11 says, it's not just this internal emotion, like, I kind of wish I had what he had. No, it's just like boiling over rage. It's going to break out into a bar fight kind of jealousy. It's going to get nasty. And it does in verse 12 in the next section, which we'll read next week. It's this violent, impulsive, physical impulse and reaction. It's just not just this internal feeling, but it's a reflex that needs to be restrained and held back, like that big guy at the bar who's had too much to drink, you know? That's what this jealousy is. It's ready to fight. And you know how brothers can get. This is going to turn into a brawl. This is going to turn into something really bad. It's like a warning that the thick butt of a glass bottle is about to just crack over Joseph's head. That's coming. That's what that word means. We're going to see that next week. Brothers responded that way. But Dad didn't. How did Dad respond? Brothers responded in enraged jealousy. Dad, he didn't love the dream. He wasn't excited about it initially. He rebuked Joseph. So what are you doing? Come on. Haven't I done enough for you? Calm down. He didn't love it. But, he questioned it. He pushed back a little. He kind of thought, you really think you could take your old man? That kind of moment between a son and a dad. You really gonna be in charge of me? You really taking over the business here? You for real, kid? Kind of questioned it. But it said he kept the word. He put it in his pocket. He stored it away. He didn't throw it away. Put it into storage. Maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. I'll keep that in mind, okay? It's a good response by Dad. Dad was skeptical, but he gave it some good thought, just in case there was a real message from God in there. Brothers were jealous. Dad kept the word. I want to know, how would you respond in this kind of situation? What would your reaction be? Would you be in the bar fight camp? I hate this kid. I'm ready to fight now. Or would you be more like Dad, like, it's annoying. I don't really know, but, I'll think about it. Hate-filled jealousy? Or the skeptical, cautious consideration? Where are you? Think about that. What would your response be if you got news that the favorite kid in your family told everybody, hey, I'm taking over. I'm going to be in charge. You're all going to work for me someday. I guess it depends on the guy, right? Depends on which kid is, and what the kid's like who's saying that. If it's just a regular guy like you or me, or gal, didn't seem to deserve that role. Maybe we didn't respect his work ethic. Maybe we looked down on him as immature, incompetent, maybe a little snotty and bratty. We might have a hard time keeping the word like Jacob did, right? Be annoying. Might be difficult to carefully consider it like Dad. If that's the guy who's saying, I'm taking over, I'm probably in the bar fight camp. But if that favorite son was perfect, if he had exemplary character, if he was a capable leader, a magnetic personality, an authoritative teacher, wise, kind, strong, courageous, humble, loving, gentle, gracious, self-sacrificial, would you be okay with that guy? How do you hate that? I think we still hate that because our flesh is so messed up. We think we deserve that role of authority no matter what. We think we deserve that paycheck that comes with that manager's job no matter what. I want it all. I think this is true whether you're a bootstrap, lunch pail, hard work kind of person, or whether you're a lazy, entitled mooch kind of person. Both people feel the same way. I want the authority. I want the paycheck. Sin, our sinfulness, doesn't discriminate. It affects all of us in the same way, I think. All of us think we deserve that. Our flesh wants to be the favorite and have all its privileges. Our flesh wants to be in charge of itself and have nobody else tell us what to do, right? I think our culture, our country is built on those ideas. Autonomy, self-gratification, independence and materialism, freedom and prestige. These are the values that are, I think, in the brothers' hearts as well. We want to be the favorite son, and we want to be the ruler. And when a Joseph comes into the picture and threatens those things, our fleshly impulse is to push back. It's a fight with cynical questioning, with anger, with jealousy, with hatred. Because I deserve that, I want that, and nobody's going to be in charge of me but me. Right? Well, friends, this is where the gospel comes in. Joseph has entered into the story, hasn't he? And part of listening to his dream, giving serious consideration to it, is setting aside our hate, putting our fists down for a second, getting over our jealousy, trusting that we actually do need what he's saying. Think of that verse in John chapter 7, where Jesus says that the world hates him because he testifies about it, that its works are evil. You and I can hear that and get offended, be angry, hate Jesus for it, like the brothers. Seriously? You going to judge me? You going to tell me I'm evil? Or you can give it some real thought. Say, maybe he's right. Like Dad. We need to see that Jesus is truly the favorite and beloved Son of God who does deserve a place of honor, not because an imperfect father broke birth order, but because Jesus is truly the firstborn of all creation, right? The image of the invisible God, his Father, by whom all things were created in heaven and on earth. Heaven and earth. Don't hate him for that, as if he's taking some special status from you. But realize that he has to be that. He has to be all those things. He has to be the favorite son. He has to be perfect. He has to be in charge. Because that makes the cross that much more costly, doesn't it? And that reminds us that his costly death was the very thing that then in turn imparts to us the status that we never deserved to begin with, right? It's the gospel. And lastly, part of believing in Jesus requires that we stop hating the idea of him being in charge. We have to stop hating him for telling us that our works are evil. We have to stop hating him for being the favorite, the beloved son, and we have to stop hating him for actually being in charge, actually being the king. Jesus came to announce his kingdom, that he is the king. He came to rule, to set up that kingdom, and he was killed for it because people hated it. Nobody wanted to hear that. That's what the Gospels say. That's what Acts say his message was. He's the king, came to bring the kingdom. And that is actually a challenge for a lot of us Americans who love and think we deserve democracy. I like democracy. Calm down. Okay, I like democracy. I'm grateful for it. I want to have a say in the rules. I need my vote. I appreciate that. I don't want an authoritarian monarch in my life. Well, we kind of have to get over that. Not politically, our government's going to be whatever it is. But theologically and in our faith, you have to get over that little speed bump they were conditioned against. We have to get over that in order to put our faith in Jesus and agree with who he says he is. And once we can do that, we see that this king is humble and gracious and perfect. He's not this snotty brat. This king is credible in every imaginable way. He's always good and right. Because this king died for us so that we would not have to. Because this king was raised back to life to prove that he is the life-giving God who will resurrect and restore us into his good and perfect presence forever. And when we realize that, we'd be foolishly stubborn to hate him for being the king or the beloved son or the one who manages and judges us. Let me say all this another way. We hate favorites and bossiness because it usually means that somebody is taking what we think we deserve. That is exactly why we can love and trust Jesus, isn't it? We can trust Jesus because he is the favorite son, because he is the true king, who by our hate on the cross got exactly what we deserve, to give us what we didn't. Let's pray. Lord, if there is any hate or jealousy or bitterness in our hearts towards Jesus right now, would you please clean it out? By your Spirit, would you please help us to lower our fists, lose the temper, and really consider what Jesus is saying, who he is, what he's done. Accept the truth that he is the good and perfect King. He is our boss, and he deserves to be. That he is the good and perfect and favorite Son because he lived a sinless life, because he is the perfect image of God. Let us not hate that. Let us love that. Let us believe in that. Let us preach that to people who so desperately need to hear that dream, that message, that gospel, that truth. Lord, we thank you for sending us Jesus to correct us in these ways, to guide us out of our hatred, and to give us a message to people who are hostile towards you, that you have made peace through your perfection, through the death and resurrection of your Son and our King. It's in his name we pray. Amen.